is a very hot topic. With over 50% of new power producing assets in the United States this year being solar PV, it is clearly a rising trend. It accounted for 65% of global renewable energy capacity growth last year, becoming the highest growing source of energy worldwide. This increase makes sense since the cost of solar power has decreased by 82% over the last decade, making it a cheap, clean, modular, and flexible energy source. But what happens if there's no sun? Hi, and welcome to Energy Explained in Short, where we discuss all things energy and more specifically renewable energy. So a little explanation before we really start, because you may be wondering why this episode is in English.
Yes, so we got some feedback on this podcast series, and there is actually a lot of interest from the audience. Why are you not making this in English? So we were discussing back and forth, why not give the audience what they want?
Yeah.
So
and we were very, very happy to hear this, feedback, and that there was an interest for us to make it, in English. So we started thinking how we should do it, if we should follow the same format as we do in our other episodes in Danish, or if we should try something different. So,
yeah, we came up with these in short episodes.
Yep, exactly. So in these short episodes, we will try to dive into a topic in a shorter time, and we'll have a discussion in the end here. Kirstine, who's here with me today. And so stay tuned. If you have an interest in renewable energy, news, trends, and you want to have a short and sweet podcast to listen to on your commute to work or at any other point in your life, of course.
I'm Kirstine.
I'm Munia.
And this is the Energy Explained in Short.
Today we talk about how solar PVs work, their challenges, and the killer solar and battery combo. Let's start with a small physics lesson. Solar panels are composed of photovoltaic cells, which convert the energy from the sun into electricity. These cells are placed between layers of semiconducting materials, each of them having a different electronic property. When getting photons from sunlight, each of the layers is energized, creating an electric field that results in a direct current of electricity. That direct current needs to pass through an inverter before it can be used to supply the demand. So, as we said, the key to all of this is our big star, the sun. If there's no sun, there's no photons and there's no electricity. Now, let's imagine a sunny day. It may be mid-July, you are dying from the heat, as long as you are not in Denmark. Maybe you'll get sunburnt, but on the bright side, a solar PV plant is generating electricity like there's no tomorrow. Only in a matter of minutes, a big cloud comes by and covers the sun.
Altså, vi havde et eksempel på en stor solcellepark, som der har været i medierne også, hvor vi har fortalt om også på 158 megawatt, som er blevet tilsluttet. Og så på sådan en rigtig god og solskinnende dag, jamen, så er det bare super lækkert med sådan en solcellepark.
This is Martin Hartvig from Danish National TSO Energinet, who explains how this exact scenario happened in real life. As he explains, a big solar PV park of 158 megawatt was connected to the grid on a nice and sunny day, producing a lot of nice and clean energy, but as it is classic in Denmark, a small cloud passed and covered the sun. Before we continue though, a TSO, or transmission system operator, must ensure the balance of the grid, a balance that is maintained by constantly having equal energy production and demand. Otherwise, there could be a risk of a blackout, for example. So their work is crucial.
Og så sker der simpelthen det, at outputtet fra den her solcellepark på 150 megawatt, det begynder at stå og svinge op og ned imellem 20 megawatt og 120 megawatt. Det er et kæmpe udsving.
So, as Martin explains, the power output of that single solar PV plant dropped from 120 megawatt to 20 megawatt in a short time span due to one single cloud. I mean, you would also be annoyed if you were sunbathing and then one tiny cloud covered the beautiful sun. Or I would at least. So this is the same with the solar PVs. And because they also get annoyed and drastically change the power output in a short time span, all reserves had to be activated just to stabilize the energy generation from that plant. So now you might be thinking, is solar useless at night or simply when there's no sun? Literally speaking, it may be, yes, but no need to worry because we have a way out. That's where batteries come in. With batteries, the fluctuations in energy production can be minimal, so they can be used to stabilize the energy plant. What's clear is that we cannot control fluctuating energy sources like wind and solar because we can't switch on the sun whenever we feel like doing it. So, in a renewable future, we need to control consumption instead. In that sense, batteries can be seen as a consumption system. Flexible consumption is vital in the future in order for us to ensure a balanced grid. And this flexible consumption will also come from electric cars, other batteries, and heating pumps. What does this exactly mean? That batteries are used to store surplus energy when the sun is shining. So, for instance, when a solar PV plant is generating a lot of energy and needs too much for the grid, that energy can be stored instead of turning the plant off, for example. The stored energy is given back to the system when production is low and there is a need for it. So, for example, at night or when it suddenly becomes cloudy. This way, batteries can be seen as a consumption system, which we can control, instead of the production, which we cannot. So, is this it? Are batteries the ultimate game changer? We will talk about it in the discussion. Hi, Kirstine.
Hi.
Thanks for being here to discuss this Energy Explained in short episodes. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to have the opportunity to talk about these topics with you since you write a lot about them. And yeah, before we tackle the question of, batteries being the ultimate game changer, we did start this episode with some numbers, and I think maybe it would be nice to put them into perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, megawatt, gigawatt, they're a little bit abstract, and I never know how much or how big we're talking about. Yeah, you and I have been doing some math, and yeah, I for one have not done this much math in a long time. But yeah. So solar PV installations are expected to grow by almost 1,500 gigawatt from 2010 to 2027. That's the data we got from the International Energy Agency. And that means that it would exceed natural gas by 2026 and coal by 2027. So these are quite big numbers, I think. Yeah.
So what we tried to do was to do a quick research on what the average household consumes every year. And that number we found was 10,000 kilowatt hour. Mm-hmm. At full capacity, the number of households covered would be greater, of course, because we don't have sun 24/7.
Yeah.
So we assume that the power PV plants are running approximately 10 hours each day. Mm-hmm. On average during the year. And then these 1,500 gigawatt capacity would be enough to actually supply more than 500 million households every year.
Yeah.
That's a huge number.
It is indeed. Yeah. I don't know how many households are in the world, but 500 million just with the solar PV energy generation. That's a big number.
Yeah. So the development is going to have a massive impact on the renewable future that we're entering. And I think especially in the US, but also elsewhere, but especially in the US, there's a lot of focus on solar PV. The Solar Energy Industries Association wrote that the installed capacity in the US in Q1 this year was 47% more compared to the Q1 last year. And this is just 1 year's difference. It's definitely rising.
So you were talking about the US, and you were at the Clean Power Fair this year, and that was in May?
Yes.
Yeah. In New Orleans. Was solar and batteries a buzzing topic?
Definitely. We had a stand there, and so many people came by to ask about, what's the new in solar and batteries, especially that integration of the two. So there are a lot of conversations going on about this, definitely.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard a lot about the solar and battery combination. It's something that we're constantly reading stuff about and learning news and stuff. But I don't hear so much about connecting batteries to other types of renewables.
Yeah, what you would often see is a hybrid plant where you have both solar and perhaps a wind park as well, and match it with some batteries. But batteries go very well with solar because batteries are very useful when you have to levelize these small fluctuations in a plant, like the example that you told us about before.
Yeah.
But it has its limitations when you have to store a lot of energy because batteries have quite low energy density. Whereas a PTX plant, power to X, where the energy is converted into a green fuel with higher energy density, well, that goes very well with wind and a wind plant. Because here there might be a lot of energy produced at night where the consumption is low.
Yeah.
So there are different types of storage that match different types of renewable energy sources.
So there are, of course, also limitations then with batteries, as you're saying here. And this was the question that we started the discussion, or we asked before starting the discussion, precisely if batteries are the ultimate game changer. And of course, they're not a solution that one fits all solution. Those are hard or impossible to find.
Yeah, they definitely challenges with batteries too. I mean, solar, what you discussed earlier, is fairly cheap, and the market is becoming more profitable. But batteries, on the other side, are rather expensive, and especially the materials that are needed. And at the same time, as we also discussed before, they have their limitations. They are heavy, the energy density is rather low for batteries, and that's why actually they don't work so well for planes or big container ships. Here, chemical fuels are much more useful because they have a high energy density. And that's why we actually, when we look at the renewable future, we need a mix of storage solutions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you said about some transport options there, and that's why we can't electrify planes. I thought about this before, but yeah, if we put this kind of batteries in a plane, the plane would just, first of all, it would not
fly. No.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. But you also mentioned the materials there, and there's also plenty of discussions on how they are sourced and if it's an ethical matter, also how they're disposed of. From an environmental point of view, which, I mean, working in renewables, this is something that we tend to focus on, right? Batteries also die at some point, so that should also be considered.
Yeah, and this inherent life cycle means that not only die and become waste, but their efficiency also drops as the years go by, because as soon as the charging is removed, the batteries actually start losing charge, and this is due to the non-current producing chemical reactions within the batteries that occur even when no load is applied. So from an environmental point of view, the energy system of the future should naturally seek out sustainable opportunities that are long-lasting and future-proofed, which is also why batteries should not be the only solution.
I mean, at first when I found out that solar is so cheap, and we started this episode in the introduction saying this, it's cheap, it's the cheapest renewable energy form, and it's modular, flexible, clean, all of these good things, right? And I was thinking, well, we can just put solar panels everywhere. We have so many buildings, we can put them on our roofs, we can put them in fields, we can, but of course, as everything, it's not that simple.
No, and it's not just about building a lot of renewable plants, but it's also to get the renewable plants to act in a manner that suits our consumption, that suits our grid infrastructure, everything.
Yeah.
And energy storage is a big part of that, and it's going to be a huge part of that in the future. We just have to find that way of connecting the different things, so it works.
Yeah, and it always is so complex, but I think we can end the discussion on this note here. Otherwise our short and sweet episodes will turn into a not so short but of course still sweet episodes. So thank you, Kirstine, for a very good discussion today.
Thank you, Munia.
Thanks for listening to the Energy Explained in Short series. If this episode was interesting, follow us and stay tuned for more episodes to come in the future.